What is happening YouTube? It's Jacob here from the Rush Dimension, and today I'll be showcasing my $50 budget scrap Orcust deck profile. So at our locals, they issued the challenge that we need to construct a deck that has a $50 limit using the TCG Player app. So basically, do not take into consideration the copies used. The rules stated that we're allowed to use whatever copies we have and just use the cheapest copies available when doing the pricing. Budget version is extremely weird, but I managed to make it work. So I'll quickly run through the deck profile with you, and hopefully this will inspire some of the guys to try and build a deck like this if they are on a budget when playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And at least this was a fun deck as well. One of my favorite decks, and I really enjoyed playing this deck after all these years. This one unfortunately does not have Girisu in, because Girisu is one of the more expensive cards, and it also unfortunately only has one Dingirsu, which was the prime target that I at least tried to fit in the budget. So let's get into the profile. So as usual standard, we played the 3 Orcust Knightmare, double skeleton, and the 1 brass Bombard. Not really going to explain anything much here. Everyone should know by now what most of the cards do. And then just adding in 2 World Wand. 2 World Wand was one of the better choices, and I tried to fill the Orcust lineup as much as possible because there's a lot of discard type cards within the deck itself to be able to get most of these cards into the graveyard before committing to your Orcust plays should your opponent try to stop you with any type of hand trap. And then that's all for the Orcust. Then going on to the scraps, we have the 3 scrap recyclers. I went with 2 scrap Raptors because I didn't want to see too many starters in the hand, but at least wanted to have the option there to be able to find it. I only went with the 2 Raptors, no searches for the Raptor itself like Fossil Dig or the Scrap Searcher, I can't remember the name now. And then just the 1 brick, the Golem, and the Rosenix to dump off the scrap recycler. This one actually came in clutch for a few of the other cards. I will explain that as we get into the cards later. And then just additional starters, we went for the Knights, Dark Refer, and Armageddon Knight, just for additional ways of getting cards into the graveyard, still being darks and helping to get through some of your plays that require darks, which is pretty awesome. And this being able to special summon under the restrictions of the Orcust was pretty cool. Then the different tech extenders that I use for the deck, on all the cheapest versions I could find, I played 3 Link Slayer. Pretty good just to special summon this and then normal summon one of your Orcusts and being able to link that off for your Galatea and getting your plays going that way. And going second, this is damn good. You special summon this and discard 2 cards for cost and targeting, and then waiting for a response from there. If there's no response, then everything blows off. And alongside that, I had 2 Tenyi Spirit Vishuddhas. The third one's in the side, but we'll get to that in a moment. This was pretty good alongside the Rosenix token, because you only need a non-effect monster on field to be able to resolve this effect in grave, and I did that quite a few times during the week when we played the tournament. It was pretty good and people don't expect it. And this just being a plain extender in hand, being able to special summon this under the restrictions of dark and then linking off from there was also pretty good. And then I managed to fit in some dangers. This is very incorrect, but I at least got in 3 Mothman, being at $1.99 a copy. I felt that this needed to be in. If you were going to play dangers, this needed to be into the deck, but you can cut this for anything else, for cheaper stuff if you want more expensive cards in the deck, if you still want to be under the $50 rate. I played 2 Chupacabras. This was just literally just there to be able to get cards out of your hand, and if they didn't hit the cards, if they hit this by accident, then it is what it is, but it's the cheapest card that there was. And the 1 Thunderbird, I wanted to play 2 because I couldn't fit in the Bigfoot because it's being one of the more expensive cards, but this having a Ghost from the Past reprint helped a lot for the pricing of the total of the deck. And then I played the 1 Orbital Highlander. People do not expect this card. This can be any machine dark that you can fit into the deck that you'd like to play. Unfortunately, I could not fit in the Orochi because it was too expensive for the total of the deck, but being able to manipulate the graveyard and having the correct amount of monsters in grave is pretty easy with Orcust. Adding this off the crescendo in your opponent's turn, special summoning this card, and then using all the effects was pretty easy, and it won me at least 2 games on Thursday. And then the only hand trap that I could fit in was Effect Veilers. Honestly, this could also be anything. This can be Skullmeisters or anything else that you'd prefer. I did not want to play the Lanciers because they will kind of restrict your banishing from happening as well, but Lanciers was a lot cheaper than this. But I managed to fit 3 of these in, and I veiled a few people, and they play as if Ash isn't a thing, but they forget that Veiler is a thing, and that was also one of the reasons why I could win some of the games. And then I had to squeeze in the Forbidden Chalice because under the tournament rules, the Dweller was an extremely cheap card, and I knew that it would be used against me the moment they see that I play Orcust. So I use this in the main deck, and if I see then that they're not on Dweller, then I side this out. Otherwise, I just keep it in, set it as an additional negate. And if you need to play around extra stuff that they play on the board. And then thanks to Ghosts from the Past, the returns came in a lot cheaper. So I fit in 2 of these. Unfortunately, 2 was the maximum I could fit in under restrictions, and it came in clutch most of the games. Babel, unfortunately, need just 1. Also a very cheap copy that you can find for that, and the last spell is just the 1 reinforcement of the army. All of them something ridiculous like 20 cent. So most of these cards can be used. If you're a budget type player, this is the type of deck that you can use and build for literally under $50. And then just the 1 trap was the Crescendo. This is actually a very cheap trap. I tried to play 3 at some point, but then I had to take out some of the extenders, and I was a bit weirded out with how the deck works. But you can play extra crescendos if that's your type of play style, where you just keep setting the counter trap in your turn if you don't need to worry about the field spell or anything else, and that works out quite well as well. And then going into the extra deck, just the 1 Monk for if you need to link off the Vishuddha to carry on your plays, and to have a non-effect monster on field to resolve the effect going second. And this was actually cool that it had the arrow pointing down, because you don't have that many link plays or things like Appaloosa in the side deck because it's too expensive. You just need the 1 link zone for where your 1 Orcust link monster needs to be able to resolve some of the effects that you have within the graveyard, or if you have the Crescendo set or anything like that. So that helped a lot, just having the 1 link arrow pointing downwards, so you could leave this on the field once it's used and still carry on playing in the 1 link zone that's available, because you don't link spam that much with this type of build. And then I managed to fit in 3 Galatea. You unfortunately can't play less. If you go back to the previous formats, you cannot play less than 3 Galateas. You sometimes go through 2 of them just to get the Dingirsu in the graveyard, and the 3rd one will just be a follower. And then for one of the second last Orcust, there was the 1 Longirsu. This helped a lot with bouncing some cards. People forget what the cards do, so you summon this card and you punish them for it. The 1 Scrap Wyvern, this was slightly expensive, but I opted to play it in because this going second, and knowing that you're mostly going to be facing things like battle traps, you can pop off most of the cards on the field before even committing to the normal summon or even to the battle phase. And just a ball blocker in case you get multiple dangers on the field or your normal summon on the field and you're stuck with the Orcust in hand, then at least you can dump it off this, which helped quite a lot. I just did this once, so this can be replaced with any other card. I just felt safe playing the 1. And just for some back row removal, Genesis Impact gave us very cheap versions of this card, but I just put in my more expensive ones for showcase purposes. The 1 for Phoenix for removing back row, and Unicorn to spin cards that you don't like off the field. It being dark was quite cool. And then just the 1 Decode Talker that helped with the extra negate and punching over some stronger cards if you needed to go to a link 3 or something bigger because your opponent had something big on the field. And obviously there's a very cheaper available card copy of this, so this can also be anything else that you'd like to play in place of this, something like Transversa or anything like that. And then one of the boss monsters, well, let's say going into the boss monsters that I had as links, was the 1 Orcustrion. Not being able to be destroyed by battle or card effects in that type of format or $50 format, it was quite difficult for them to play over, and most of the decks we played against couldn't afford fitting in the different type of kaijus, and the kaijus they could fit in was too big. And the other ones was the 1 Bomber Dragon, saw this card once and won that game, and the 1 Zeroboros, just in case someone managed to squeeze in something that would banish most of the time, so you'd have an advantage playing this and having the extra attack to punch for game. And then going into the 1 exceed was the 1 copy of Dingirsu. Normally you'd play 2 copies, but unfortunately I could only fit in 1 for the price range. This actually went up by 50 cents since I started pricing the cards, getting the deck right. So this was quite difficult to keep in the deck, but I had to at least fit in the 1. And this helped me win quite a few games that I played. And then just a spice that I threw in was the 1 Scrap Twin. It's like 16 cents for this card. I didn't manage to summon this once, but the idea was there, and it's pretty easy off the Golem and the Scrap Raptor to make this card, and then you can bounce 2 cards that your opponent controls, and the idea was to be able to swing for game from there, but it never came up. And then going into the side, because we didn't have kaijus, or well, weaker enough kaijus that we could play, I played the 3 Santa Claus. You can play Jizukiru, but unfortunately the only time you do that is if you are able to play your Dingirsu in the same turn. And if you can't do that, then you're just giving your opponent the beat stick that will kill you. I lost 1 game because of the draw effect of this card, but the idea was there and it still worked. And just the 1 Pancratops and the 3rd Vishuddha for going 2nd and being able to break boards. I couldn't fit in Book of Moon, so this was supposed to be Book of Moon, but the total ended up being over $50, so I cut them and put these in just to have a similar type of effect. Again, trying to play through like Synchron decks or anything that would have a card on field that cannot be targeted or cannot be destroyed or anything like that, and you can at least flip the card over and then remove it from the field in that manner. Just for extra back row removal, I had 2 MSTs. I didn't play the 3rd because within the main deck there was a lot of removal in general, so I just opted to play 2 extras of these in case there was a pendulum type deck that we played against. Only scored once against 1 pendulum deck, and I unfortunately still lost that game. 1 Mind Control for going 2nd, didn't see this card at all. And just for extra negates, we had the Breakthrough skill. If you can discard this off your Link Slayer, and you can still use it in graveyard, which is pretty cool. Also didn't see this, but the idea was there and something to look at for budget players. And then just a 1 Common Red Reboot, in case there was a trap heavy deck that you couldn't play around. This was supposed to help you just play a bit more safer. that is it for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more videos in this type of format, we will be doing a lot more of these videos into the future, where it will be a $50 type tournament. Please bear in mind once again that the cards showcased for the tournament in the profile are not the exact copies used when the pricing was done. You will price the cheapest card that you find on the TCG Player. That's the card you use to price, and that will be added to your total. But the cards that you are allowed to play can be any rarity, as long as the card priced was the lowest of the prices, and you are still $50 or less. Please like and subscribe, and please leave a comment if you'd like to see anything else or any changes that you would have liked to make, bearing in mind that this was an extremely budget type of deck.